All right, let's now bring in Mr. Rudolph K., National Coordinator for the South African Older Persons Forum, of course, we look at the rights of elderly persons. Rudolph, great having you with us this afternoon. Welcome. So this incident, as well as others that might not necessarily get this much media attention of the abuse of the elderly by those who they either care for or those that should be caring for them, is quite a serious concern, right? But it's hardly ever spoken about. Why do you think this is, Rudolph?
Yes, of course. One has to acknowledge the seriousness of this offence, but this is not an isolated incident. Of course, we are hoping very much for a prosecution in this case. It's not an isolated incident. Fact is that many of these cases go unreported. And it goes unreported because older persons are sometimes too scared to face the perpetrators in court. Many times the perpetrators are, as was in this case, children or grandchildren or relatives. And many of these older persons are dependent financially on those children or grandchildren, which makes it a very sensitive issue for many older persons. The fact remains, however, that the abuse of older person, according to the Older Persons Act, is an offence and is prosecutable by law.
Absolutely, Rudolph. I mean, when it comes to those very rights of the elderly here in South Africa, let's talk about these and what are some of the avenues that abused elderly or violated senior citizens. Firstly, there are quite a lot of challenges for them, rather, that they could be physically or mentally disabled and therefore cannot even or do not even know where to report such incidents. So how do you even assist and, more importantly, identify such victims?
You know, this is where our communities comes into play. Proportionately, most of our older do not live in residential care facilities or, as it's previously known, old age homes. Most older persons live in their communities, putting the responsibility, especially in those cases where older persons are mentally, where older persons are maybe suffer from Alzheimer's or dementia or are not physically able to report these cases. It puts the responsibility also on communities to report these cases to either the police or the Department of Social Development. In fact, as much as it is an offence to abuse an older person, just as much it is an offence of somebody that knows of an abuse of an older person not to report that to the authorities.
Mm-hmm. And Rudolph, looking at our social services, do you think they have adequate or enough available as well as known and accessible resources for persons in such and similar situations? And how can we then, as a country, as communities, you've said, further emphasize the need to respect the rights of our senior citizens, especially in the far-flung as well as rural areas where access to such information itself is little to non-existent?
Well, I definitely think that there's a need for more social workers, for one, in the country. It's well known that there's a shortage of social workers in the country. However, social workers are trying their best to bring these cases to court and to ensure prosecutions in these cases. The caseloads of many of the social workers are quite high, but with pressure organizations such as ourselves, we try with every single case reported to see that it's followed through and that it ends up in court and the perpetrators get prosecuted. It is, however, a challenge. That much cannot be denied.
And Rudolph, I mean, for those that don't have access to the luxury of maybe possibly staying in an old age home as suggested previously, those that stay in those rural areas because that's the only place that they can actually reside with their relatives. So what are some of the options and available care that you yourselves, as of course the Rights and Safety of Elderly Persons organization actually do? How do you assist these people? Can they be in contact with you? Can neighbors call you if they suspect that an elderly neighbor is also being abused?
Absolutely. There's currently a national help elder abuse awareness line that, and it's a toll-free line that older persons can call, or members of the community that suspect that an older person is being abused. Am I allowed to give that number up there?
Rudolph, go ahead.
The number is 080 101 110. That's one avenue that they can follow. They can also, of course, send an email to our offices. We take it up with all provinces. And also another avenue to not forget about is contacting their local Department of Social Development and the police. The police there's a national instruction by the police called Instruction 1 of 2014, which helps members of the South African police in dealing with cases of abuse of older persons. So there is avenues available for older persons, yes.
I wish we had wellness checks like we do in the States here in the country, Rudolph. Thank you so much for your insight this afternoon.